What's up guys, Mr. Holton here, and today we're going to talk about a fairly loose topic, as you may have seen from the title. And the question we're asking today is, could Mass Effect 4 or 5 fail if Shepard does not return? But before we continue, have you ever wanted to be an N7 operative, but you're humble enough to know that if the N7 program existed, you wouldn't make the cut? Well, why don't you just join the next best thing? The NSVEN Squad. An exclusive club for all the real Shepards out there in the world. You know, grab a shirt. Or better yet, get yourself a coffee cup. And if you want to join our discussions on Discord, why don't you just become a member for only $2 a month? Okay, that time over. Now a lot of you are probably scratching your heads at the title of this video. Because what do I mean? Well, ever since the release of the next Mass Effect teaser, there's sort of been this ongoing war between people in the fan base whether Shepard will return or if he even should return. I've even done a few videos myself on the possibilities, and I do admit I came off a little bit strong on at least one of those videos. A lot of the comments that I specifically want to talk about are the ones that say stuff like, the story is going to be trash without Shepard. Or that the next ME won't sell well without Shepard. And first of all, I do get why some of you guys think that. Shepard is a legendary character, and despite the fact that you can customize Shepard's appearance and choose what Shepard says and does to a certain extent, Shepard still is his or her own person in the games, and I think most of us see Shepard from the same light. When it comes to the worries of the next Mass Effect failing without Shepard, I think those worries are stemming from the reception of, you guessed it, Mass Effect Andromeda. Now again, for all of you fans of Mass Effect Andromeda, I don't hate the game, and I genuinely kind of like it after all the patches and fixes that BioWare made to it. But the lingering problem is not so much the animations and bugs anymore, but more so the dialogue and characters. The biggest elephant in the room is of course Ryder, who's often criticized as being cringy, unfunny, and just boring. Sort of like yours truly. So no matter how much I relate to Ryder as a person, Shepard is just hard to beat because our legendary commander is sort of like a James Bond in space. Or a James Cena in space. Shepard can be charming, badass, but also somewhat scary, and I think this comes down to how the Paragon and Renegade system shows off the different personalities to Shepard. Do you want to be a somewhat good person, or do you want to be somewhat of a good person with a mean streak? How much does your choices matter? What are the contexts behind your choices? Then it also kind of comes down to the voice acting. Mark Meer and Jennifer Hale has such distinct voices, and they have become so iconic to the point where you can instantly recognize Jennifer or Mark whenever you hear them somewhere else.
I'm Commander Shepard, and Mr. Holton is my favorite YouTuber. I should go.
Now, Mass Effect Andromeda never got the time to shine and become iconic in the way that the original trilogy got iconic, because Mass Effect Andromeda crashed and burned on release. But that still doesn't change the fact that generally people didn't seem to like Ryder very much. In my opinion, I think Ryder's voice acting is just fine. Both the male and the female version of Ryder.
Hi, I play Scott Ryder.
And I'm Sarah Ryder.
Sure, it dips in quality and there are definitely a few cringy jokes here and there, but I think that's just how Ryder was meant to be perceived.
Let's say, hypothetically, I was out sick the day they taught quantum... embezzlement communism.
You know, a little looser, a little more casual and non-serious. And that is, as I said, completely fine. There's no problem with that. The biggest gripe just seems how Ryder's personality seems to come off. And I think that's partly due to the dialogue wheel. The new one, that is. Mass Effect has always received flack because of the dialogue wheel, but I've honestly always thought that the Paragon and Renegade system is part of what makes the original trilogy so iconic. It gives you pretty clear choices on how your Shepard behaves, and it basically tells you that this is kind of mean and this is kind of nice. Mass Effect Andromeda's dialogue wheel, while providing more nuanced choices, doesn't really have the same impact, because what you choose to say in Andromeda doesn't really change much at all. It's more of a nice response, jokey response, dead response, or a dicky response. And I think that's reflected in Ryder. So Ryder just doesn't become as assertive as Shepard and comes off somewhat boring. And this entire explanation that I just pulled is the reasons why I think people are worried that Mass Effect 4 or 5 will flop if Shepard doesn't return. Shepard as a character was always front and center of the entire trilogy. I mean, there is a reason why Miracle of Sound's song has become so iconic as well, because the song really represents the feeling of Shepard and, in the end, Mass Effect as a whole.
No matter what scars you bear, whatever uniform you wear, you can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than Commander Shepard.
So how do we solve this? What can BioWare do for Mass Effect 4 or 5 if the game is set several hundred years into the future and we won't see Shepard? Well, in my opinion, it all comes down to the writing, dialogue, voice acting, and the scope of the story. Basically the things that are most important to any story-driven game. Oh, and the classic dialogue wheel. Let's get it back. Because even if Mark Meer and Jennifer Hale would come back to reprise their roles as Shepard, this is no guarantee that the game will succeed. BioWare has to make sure that they stick the landing with the writing, has to make sure that Shepard doesn't come off as an entirely different person, a la Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi.
What the fuck?
But then it kinda sounds like Mass Effect is doomed if Shepard doesn't return. So is it? No, not at all. Just like I said with the writing of Shepard, the same applies to any new protagonist, or even if BioWare decides to go on with Ryder. The voice acting, the dialogue, the choices, the characters around the main protagonist, it all has to stick the landing. Because we all know that Mass Effect is not only about Shepard, but the characters around Shepard. Garrus, Liara, Tali, Rex, Grunt, Jack, Mordin, Legion, Zaid, Kasumi, Thane, James, Kaidan, Ashley, Samara, and of course the most important one of them all, Richard L. Jenkins. May he rest in peace. And let's not forget about the villains. Saren was a great villain who you could sympathize with as he had been violently indoctrinated, but who could still fight back if your Shepard's words could reach him. The introduction of an overpowering godlike threat such as the Reapers, whose main goal is galactic genocide, just gives that much more weight to the story. The Elusive Man, who is an ally to us in Mass Effect 2 but gets more and more indoctrinated up until he does a Saren move and betrays us. The final confrontation between the Elusive Man, Captain Anderson, and Shepard remains to this day one of my favorite scenes in gaming, while also being one of the most heartbreaking. Now, of course, these thoughts are just built upon my own opinions. So I gotta ask you guys, do you think the next Mass Effect will flop without Shepard? Or do you agree with me that BioWare just has to nail everything else when it comes to the writing? Leave those thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And as always, Mr. Holton signing out.